Hariom. In this module, I want to talk about something foundational for Balavihar teaching. If our students do not understand Pujya Gurudev properly, they cannot properly understand Balavihar. Because Balavihar is not just a Sunday class. It is not just a place where children hear stories from our tradition. It's not just a values program, and it is definitely not just a cultural supplement. Balavihar is an expression of Gurudev's vision. So if students only know Pujya Gurudev as the founder, or the Swami in the photo, or the one whose quote is on the wall, then something seriously wrong has happened. They may be inside the institution without ever entering the vision. And that is what I want to focus on in this session. There are several major problems in the way students often come to know Pujya. And if we don't address these problems intentionally, then students may spend years in Balvihar, 13 years in fact, and still not form a real relationship with his teachings or with his mission. So, in this module, I want to do three things. First, identify the major issues. Second, explain why each one matters. And third, offer the right Balavihar response. Not abstract, but practical. Because this is not just about inspiration. This is about design. This is about how we teach. This is about what kind of student we are actually trying to form. So let's begin. Problem number one. Pujya Gurudev feels historically important, but not personally relevant. This is one of the biggest challenges. Many students know Pujya Gurudev as a great figure from the past. They know he founded Chinmaya Mission. They know he gave Gita Jnana Yajnas. They may even know he traveled the world. They know a few stories. But in their mind, he belongs to a bygone era. And that means he's respected, but not consulted. He is admired, but not turned to. He's celebrated, but not felt as necessary. Why does this happen? Because many students do not see how Gurudev connects to their actual life. Their world is school stress, friendship issues, identity confusion, social media pressure, comparison with others, loneliness, embarrassment about their own culture. They need to fit in, and they have a fear of being left out. There's the pressure to perform. And unless we make the connection explicit, students silently conclude Gurudev may have been great, but he does not really speak to my world. Problem. Because once Pujya Gurudev becomes merely historical, Balavihar becomes merely educational. And Pujya Gurudev never intended Balavihar to be merely educational. He intended it to be transformational. So what's the solution? The solution is that we have to teach Gurudev as someone who understood the human mind. Not just ancient society, not just Hindu institutions, not just scriptural language, the human mind. Yes, the form of modern life has changed, but the anxieties of the mind have not changed as much as we think. Insecurity, not new. Ego isn't new. Distraction, attachment, confusion, none of these are new. Search for approval isn't even new. What is new, though? Platforms are new. Psychology is not. That means Gurudev is relevant, but we must teach that relevance. As Balavihar teachers, we have to bring Pujya Gurudev into the child's inner world. We have to ask questions like, what would Pujya Gurudev say about comparison culture? What would he say about constantly needing validation? What would he say about being successful on the outside, but restless on the inside? What would he say about cultural confusion? What would he say about having many options, but very little clarity? The moment a student feels he understands what I am going through, Gurudev becomes real. And that matters deeply because children build relationship, not with what is merely respectable, but with what feels personally meaningful. Problem number two. Students have no structured mental timeline of Pujya Gurudev's life and mission. We hear about Gurudev in fragments. He was a journalist. He was skeptical. He went to the Himalayas, studied Vedanta, founded Chinmaya Mission. He loved children. Now, these are all true, but they are not yet a narrative. And students need a narrative. If facts are scattered, reverence remains scattered. If biography is fragmented, identity remains fragmented. Students need to be able to see Pujya Gurudev's life as a journey, a sharp, questioning young man, a person who was not blindly accepting anything, a seeker, a student, a tapasvi, a teacher, a builder, a reviver of Hindu confidence, a visionary who saw what had to be rebuilt. Without this arc, students only know details. They don't know direction. And narrative matters because narrative helps children ask, what changed him? What did he discover? Why did he take this path? What burden did he carry for society? Why did he choose to teach children? Why did he create Balavihar? These are the questions that make biography alive. So, what's the solution here? We must teach Pujya Gurudev through a clear life structure. Students should walk away knowing the broad sequence: early life and brilliance, questioning and skepticism, encounter with spiritual masters, discipline and study, return to society, his teaching revolution, institution building, children and youth education, global mission, legacy. This should not be left vague. The more clearly children can place Pujya Gurudev's life into a meaningful timeline, the more they begin to feel they are seeing a purposeful life unfold, not just memorizing unrelated facts. And that becomes inspiring. Because now Gurudev is not just someone great, he is someone whose life means something. Problem number 3. Pujya Gurudev's teachings are not distilled into memorable takeaways. In this modern age that children live in, there is so much compressed messaging. They are constantly absorbing short phrases, fast impressions, repeatable ideas, and simplified frameworks. That can be dangerous, but it also means something important for us as teachers. If we do not clarify Gurudev's big ideas, children will drown in information and miss the very essence. Too often, students hear many beautiful things, but cannot answer simple questions like, what did Pujya Gurudev really want from the youth? What is one core message from his life? What is Vedanta in a simple living sense? What was he trying to build, Balavihar? If children cannot summarize, they usually cannot retain. And if they can't retain, they cannot live it. So, what do we need to do? We need to identify the memorable core ideas that Balavihar should repeat again and again. For example, you are bigger than you. Master the mind, do not be mastered by the mind. Right living prepares you for right seeing. Your life is not only for achievement, but for contribution. Spiritual growth means becoming clearer, steadier, and nobler. True success is inner mastery, not outer noise. Now, of course, Pujya Gurudev's teachings are far deeper than slogans, but children need portable entry points. These are not replacements for depth, they are bridges to depth. We cannot assume that just because something is profound, it will automatically be remembered. Teachers have to become deliberate about distillation. When we teach a story, ask, what is the takeaway? When we teach a quote, ask, what is the one line students should walk away with? When we teach a lesson, ask, what should they be able to repeat next week without the worksheet in front of them? If we do not do that, then Pujya Gurudev's voice gets lost in the clutter of everything else children consume. Problem number 4. Students remember stories about Pujya Gurudev, but not the feeling of Pujya. This is a very subtle issue, but a very important one. Sometimes students know stories, but do not feel the bhava. They know events, they know external details, they know certain quotations, but they do not yet feel his compassion. They do not yet feel his courage. They do not feel his love for children. They do not yet feel his urgency for society. They do not yet feel the force of his conviction. And if that emotional recognition is missing, relationship does not form. Because spiritual education is not only informational, it is relational. A student can memorize 10 facts and still not feel close. A student can identify Pujya Gurudev's picture and still not inwardly turn toward him. So, as teachers, we have to ask ourselves, when I teach about Pujya Gurudev, am I only transferring facts? Or am I helping students sense the person? That is the shift. The solution is that every story about Pujya Gurudev must reveal a quality. Not just what happened, but what does this show? Does it show compassion, fearlessness, discipline, humor, sharpness, tenderness, commitment, love for the next generation? We must help students name the quality and feel the quality. For example, this is not just a funny story, this shows how Gurudev made truth approachable. This is not just a story of travel, this shows how much he cared that people wake up. This is not just a story of discipline, this shows what total commitment to a mission is like. That pause matters. Because otherwise, stories remain entertaining, and Balavihar is not trying to entertain students into devotion. We are trying to awaken recognition of greatness, recognition of love, recognition of guidance. That is very different. Problem 5, students cannot define guru in a personally meaningful way. Many students can repeat a formal definition. Guru is one who removes darkness. Guru is the one who removes ignorance. Great. But then we must go one step further. What darkness? What ignorance? In your life? Right now, for most students, that translation never happens. So, guru stays theological, it stays philosophical, it stays ceremonial, but it does not become personal. And until it becomes personal, Guru Tattva remains distant. The solution is to make ignorance visible in the student's own life. Ignorance is not just not knowing scripture. Ignorance can mean thinking I am only what others think of me. Thinking popularity is the same as happiness. Thinking anger makes me strong. Thinking pleasure is peace. Thinking I should hide my traditions to fit in. Thinking success will solve inner confusion. Now the idea becomes real. Now, Guru is not merely someone we worship in principle. Guru is the one who helps me see where I am mistaken. That is much more powerful. So, Balavihar teachers should help students ask, what wrong ideas does Pujya Gurudev help me correct? What false beliefs does he expose? What confusion does he help untangle? What weakness does he help me see clearly? When students can answer that, Guru stops being a word in a definition and becomes a force in life. Problem number 6. Students admire Gurudev, but don't use his teachings when life gets messy. This is one of the clearest warning signs. Students may know prayers, they may know stories, they may know values, they may even participate enthusiastically in class. But when life becomes emotionally messy, they feel jealous, excluded, ashamed, angry, anxious, confused, pressured, lonely. Pujya Gurudev does not enter the picture. And that means one thing. They have learned admiration without application. That's a serious gap. Because if Gurudev's wisdom is not available when life is difficult, then students will unconsciously assume that Balavihar teachings belong to clean spaces, not real life. They will think spirituality is for class, camps, altars, and special events, but not for pain and friendships. not for cultural discomfort, not for fear of judgment, nor for emotional instability. The solution is that we have to teach through scenarios, not only principles in isolation, but application in the messy world. For example, a student feels excluded from a group. What would Pujya Gurudev say? A student is ashamed to bring Hindu identity into public. What would Pujya Gurudev say? A student is constantly comparing themselves. What would Pujya Gurudev say? A student wants popularity more than integrity. Again, what would Gurudev say? This is how Pujya Gurudev practical. Teachers need more reflection exercises, discussion scenarios, dilemmas, and apply this moment. We cannot stop at here's the quote. We have to move to here's the situation, now use the quote. Here's the situation, now use the quote. That is where real training begins. Because eventually, we want students to feel when life gets confusing, I have a way to think, I have a source of clarity, I have guidance. That is when Balavihar has done something real. Problem number 7. Students do not recognize Pujya Gurudev's originality in Hindu revival. Another important issue is that students often assume all of this simply existed. They assume Hindu classes have always been there, that youth camps have been there from the beginning of time, that scriptural teaching in this format has always existed, that someone was always doing this. Pujya Gurudev was revolutionary. He was not simply preserving a system that was already functioning beautifully, he was rebuilding confidence, rebuilding access, rebuilding transmission, rebuilding educational structure. He saw that if Hindu civilization was to live meaningfully, it could not survive on memory alone. It needed teaching, systematic teaching, youth engagement, children's formation, contemporary communication, institutional structure. Oh, that's extraordinary. And students should know that because if they do not understand Gurudev's originality, they will see him as generic. Respected, yes, but generic nonetheless. The solution is that Balavihar must explicitly name his innovations. Students should know that Gurudev made scriptural wisdom publicly accessible in a new way. They should know that teaching children systematically was part of his vision. They should know that he combined fidelity to tradition with modern communication. They should know he was not just a saintly person, but a civilizational strategist. That language matters. Because modern children admire creators, builders, visionaries, and reformers. And Gurudev was all of these things. We should not hide his genius under vague reverence. We should reveal it. That helps students see not only holiness, but brilliance. That strengthens both devotion and admiration. Problem number 8. Students cannot justify why Gurudev matters in a Western worldview. At some point, our students will be questioned. Maybe aggressively, maybe casually, but they will be questioned. Questions like why do Hindus need a guru? Isn't religion just superstition? Why follow some ancient tradition? Why not just be a good person? Why do you need scripture? If Balaviar has not prepared them, students may either become silent, defensive, confused. None of these are ideal. Gurudev was not anti intellectual. He was deeply rational, clear, precise, humorous, and philosophically strong. Students should know that following Gurudev is not an escape from thought, it is an invitation. So, the solution here is intellectual confidence. Not arrogance, not argumentativeness, but clarity. Students should be able to understand a guru is needed because self ignorance is hard to detect from within one's own blind spots. Tradition is not superstition simply because it is old. It must be understood in terms of purpose and insight. Vedanta is not anti science or anti reason. No, it is a disciplined inquiry into the nature of self, of experience, of reality. Dharma is not social pressure, it is alignment with what supports inner and outer order. This kind of clarity matters enormously because devotion without clarity becomes fragile, and clarity without devotion becomes dry. Balavihar must cultivate both. We want students who can say with calm confidence, this tradition is thoughtful, this teacher is profound, this path is meaningful, and I know why. Problem 9. Students do not know how to prioritize living Gurudev's mission today. This final issue is perhaps the most important. Students today are often trained to think in terms of success, visibility, performance, image, and achievement. And of course, excellence matters. Achievement matters, growth matters. But Balavihar must ask a deeper question. Towards what end? What is success for? What kind of person are we producing? What hierarchy of values is being formed? If students leave Balavihar thinking only, I want to do well, but not, I want to live usefully, nobly, dharmically, then Gurudev's mission has not yet entered them. Because Pujya Gurudev did not build Balavihar merely to inform Hindus. He wanted integrated human beings, people of character, people of clarity, people of self mastery, people who serve, people who think deeply, people who can stand on Dharma. The solution is that we must repeatedly clarify the value hierarchy. Seva is greater than self display, Dharma is greater than popularity, self mastery is greater than self branding, character is much greater than applause, usefulness is greater than ego centered success. Now, this doesn't mean students should reject ambition. It means ambition must be guided. The question must slowly shift from how do I become impressive to how do I become an instrument for something higher? That is a very Chinmaya shift. Think big, think Chinmaya. And unless Balavihar teaches it intentionally, the culture around the child will teach the opposite. So, what must we do as Balavihar teachers? If all of this is true, then understanding Pujya Gurudev cannot be left to occasional exposure. It cannot be one Jayanti lesson every year. It cannot be a few stories here and there. It can't be assumed. It must be formed. Which means, as Balavihar teachers, we have to teach Gurudev in at least 6 different ways. We must teach him as a story, a life journey with turning points and purpose. We must teach him as a mirror, someone who helps students understand their own confusion and struggles. We must teach him as a message, a source of memorable guiding ideas. We must teach him as a feel, someone whose compassion, courage, and conviction can be sensed. We must teach him as a guide, someone whose teaching can be applied in difficult. And we must teach him as a mission, a call to live with Dharma, usefulness, self mastery, and responsibility. Now, if we do not do this, students may remain around Chinmaya mission without ever really entering it. But if we do this, then something powerful happens. Pujya Gurudev stops being distant. He stops being merely ceremonial. He stops being simply becomes present. And when Pujya Gurudev becomes present in a student's life, Balavihar changes. Then class is no longer only about content, it becomes about formation. Then tradition is no longer only inherited, it becomes chosen. Then devotion is no longer borrowed, it becomes personal. Then mission is no longer what Chinmaya mission does, it becomes what I must carry forward. That is a completely different outcome. So I want to leave you with this thought. If we do not intentionally form our students' understanding of Gurudev, the world will form their understanding of everything else first. The world will tell them what success means, what identity means, what confidence means, what freedom means. what happiness means, what life is for. Balavihar cannot respond to that by only giving more information. It must respond by giving clarity, meaning, belonging, fiction, and direction. This is why teaching the vision of Pujya Gurudev properly is not an optional enrichment. It is central to Balavihar. Because Pujya Gurudev is not only the founder of the organization, he is the source of the. And if our students truly understand him, not just recognize him, not just quote him, not just memorize a few stories about him, but truly understand him, then we are not merely producing children who attend Balavihar. We are producing young people who can think more clearly, live more steadily, stand more confidently, and carry Dharma more consciously. That is exactly what Balavihar must aim. Hariom.